We're getting there. If you have a sharp eye, you will notice in the program of VivaTeck this year, all across the board, we have a special stage for Tech at Africa. This morning, President Kagame of Africa was here with President Macron. And we have it's not up on the board yet, but we have what you're about to hear now, an interesting roundtable about the situation of Africa and technology and what's happening, what's not happening, and the whole question of whether it can, how technology in Africa will develop. That's not an accident. One of the big sponsors of VivaTeck, you will also notice if you are careful, is Orange, the big global telephone company, which just happens to be very interested in Africa, and Stéphane Richard, the CEO, is personally interested in it. So we have a kind of interesting confluence, and Orange came to us this year and said, could you please increase the Africa component in the programming? And so I think, are we all set? Let's bring them out. There we go. Thank you very much. Fabienne Schmidt at the end, who is the high-tech and media reporter for Les Echos, is going to be leading the discussion, and she will introduce the panelists. So without further ado, Roundtable Tech for Africa. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Fabienne Schmidt. I'm chief of the high-tech and media section of for the daily economic newspaper Les Echos in France. So we're here to talk about tech for Africa. And as you probably know, Africa is one of the main topics of this third edition of VivaTeck. You can see Africa everywhere at the show. We have here 100 African startups, and several countries like Morocco or Tunisia have their own pavilion here at VivaTeck. With 300 innovation centers in its 54 countries, Africa has the potential to become one of the next hubs of global innovation. Africa Tech is actually booming, and the continent is today a kind of new digital frontier driven by digital natives, 995 million mobile subscribers, and 362 million of internet users. So we're going to speak about the tech ecosystem in Africa, about innovation, of course, and how startups find funding. And the question is also, what will be the next evolution in Africa, and who will lead it? So to answer those questions, I'm with Stéphane Richard, Chairman and CEO of Orange, Emeraude Abdellah, Regional Director of For Africa Initiative for Microsoft, Sina Lawson, Minister of Post and Digital Economy for the Government of Togo, and Thione Niang, author, social entrepreneur, and political strategist. So we'll begin with you, Stéphane Richard. Orange is present in 18 countries in Africa, and this is a place where you help startups, and where you have 120 million customers. So how would you describe the tech landscape in Africa? Would you say For example, that there is a real ecosystem, a real African ecosystem?
Well, the first thing probably to say about Africa is that it is a connected continent today. If you take the mobile penetration, it is twice higher in Africa than in India, for instance. So to some extent, Africa is already a connected continent. Of course, there is still some infrastructure to build. We have also to get some smartphones at a price that will enable the digitization to spread much more in Africa. But it's a very good start and a very good situation today to contemplate a very promising future. Now, regarding tech, we have very interesting things, especially because there is a number of areas where digital tools can provide really game-changing solutions to development issues, like education, like agriculture, like e-commerce, like content, and a number of other things. So we see today a number of startups in Africa. The quantity of capital that is invested in the tech in Africa is still too small. It's in a range of $400 million today. I think we can do much more. That is the reason why Orange has decided to first identify and coach startups in Africa through acceleration programs called Orange Fab. Today we have more than 30 startups within our Orange Fab programs in Africa. Second, we have decided also to open a special corporate fund, Orange Digital Ventures for Africa, with 50 million as a first step. And what we want to do clearly is to be one of the players, as a telco, of course, but also as an investor, to really promote innovation, identify, help, open doors to startups. We see a growing number of young entrepreneurs, a growing numbers of young people having great ideas, and there is still a lot of things to do in areas like e-commerce, for instance, where Africa is probably less advanced than other areas in the world. So for us, it's clearly one of our priorities to invest in innovation.
What do you think, Thione Niang, about this landscape tech in Africa? You are an entrepreneur yourself. How do you explain there's this boom of startups in Africa?
Well, thank you. This boom of startups in Africa is a response to Africans finding solutions of some of the biggest problems that we have in the continent. Africa today is in the crossroads. Our generation understand today the need to find solutions that we've been fighting with for a long time. Just like Europe after the World War, where you had the Industrial Revolution, where young Europeans from across this continent had to face some of the biggest challenges across the world to rebuild their nations.
People say that
here,
when there is a problem in Africa, there's always a solution,
that's
and there's always a startup behind. Is that true?
That's where I'm coming into. And today, for a very long time after independence, our founding fathers have created an opportunity for us, the new generation, has passed us the torch. And today we have the greatest opportunity here with technology to transform drastically Africa. That's why you see many things is happening through leapfrogging. The things that we didn't know in America, in France, in other countries about technology. It's happening in Kenya with M-Pesa. It's happening in my home country like Wari, a young Senegalese, creating opportunities to the smallest, remotest villages to make sure that people like us, the farmers, I am a farmer through Jeff Zone of my project, where today farmers had problems to just have access to the market. But now from my farm and farmers around me, they can just buy through Orange with the technology, with our telephones, or through Wari with mobile technologies from their telephones. They can bank through their telephones. And this is not only on the areas of farming, but also on education, as he said, on the health systems, and also on governments and policies that's helping us today to transform the continent. This is in response to what you're asking about, a time for everyone here who's thinking about coming to Africa and investing in Africa. This is the greatest time that you can have to have the greatest returns, just like companies like Orange is doing in the continent. It is a remarkable continent. A lot of things is happening today, and it's not going to stop. It's going to continue to move forward because you have a diaspora and a new generation that travel the world, that understand what it takes to change the continent. Before I give you the mic, though, I will just say quickly, for everyone coming to invest in Africa, just like you guys in Europe and in America, when you're transforming your continents, you need outsiders, you need opportunities, you need partners to come and help. We too need supporters. We need partners from Europe, from America, from Asia to come in and support what we're trying to do in the continent. But I just say that we need it in the level where it can be a win-win situation. I don't think it's allowed anymore in Africa, where that time is gone, where you can just come do Africa and do business in Africa in any kind of way. Do business in Africa with no social responsibilities. We're not being able to follow the rules we do in so many African countries. Those days are gone. It's a new Africa. It's a new generation that understands exactly what it takes to transform our countries and solve the problems that we have. And we need it with you in the win-win situation. Thank you.
So Emerald Abdella, Africa needs partners, said Thione. Microsoft is kind of partners of Africa. Can you explain what is For Africa initiative for Microsoft?
Sure. Thank you. Let me start off by first echoing what he said, but in context of what we've done and sort of following our CEO who just did a great session here. Look, Africa today is the greatest, best-kept secret around technology. So really, if there's an opportunity for anyone who's trying to grow business, do it the right way with social impact, it's an opportunity for anyone who's interested to come in. We at Microsoft have been investing in Africa actively around innovation, skills development, affordable access for the last 5 years. We've brought on board about 500,000 SMEs online, trained over 775,000 youth, and more importantly, really helped drive the ecosystem of startups to really grow. Because look, there's an element of innovation that everyone talks about, which is nice and great, but how do you actually grow meaningful businesses? Because they have to go from an idea to a business that is viable, that can grow from Togo to Senegal to then eventually Europe. So that's the type of scalability and approach that we're taking. Now, all of that, of course, embedded in the right technology with the right skill support to really help transform the journey of the companies, but also transform Africa as well. So part of our commitment and our continued investment is really in bringing sort of the best new technologies that we have in Africa in the right context that can actually change the landscape of Africa, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in health, whether it's in education. What is our responsibility, but also our commitment in making sure that we drive that transformational journey?
Sina Laufson, you're a minister for the government of Togo. How do African states react to the multiplication of startups, and how do they help them to grow, and what kind of initiative emerge?
So thank you for the question. The first thing we have to focus on is access to infrastructure access to high-speed internet. And the way African countries, African states have been working on that was first through direct investment. In Togo, for example, we deployed high-speed internet, fiber, in universities, in the University of Lomé and the campus of the University of Kara in the north part of the country, and we linked both universities with fiber. We created a digital library. We also work, of course, with the private sector. We have Orange here working, and I'm sure that Orange, in the countries where they're present, they deploy 3G, 4G, high-speed internet using mobile technology. So that's the first way government help, access to infrastructure. The second is to create a legal and regulatory framework. In order to promote e-commerce in Africa, we need to have better regulations. And in Togo, we adopted a law, the law for digital and electronic transactions to promote e-commerce. We did even more. It's very important today. We have lots of entrepreneurs, and the government of Togo decided that 20% of all public procurement should go to young entrepreneurs and women. This is a very voluntary policy. We want to be very proactive in helping our young entrepreneurs. But you know, it's also important to say that when you talk about entrepreneurship, when you talk about innovation, you're talking about people, you're talking about their skills. And one way government needs to be, again, proactive is to create and to train new skill set, the new workforce of tomorrow. And by skill set and workforce, I'm thinking, for example, of creating generations of data scientists, data architects, all these new jobs. And it's very important to be here today because I see companies like Andela, I see companies that like We Think Code that have created schools, coding schools. These are areas where governments and our government want to be much more reactive, and we want to partner with people who have initiatives that can really enable us to better train our workforce. Because this morning, talking about Rwanda, it was said that 70% of Rwandans are less than 35 years old. And this reality is true for Rwanda, but it's also true for all of Africa. So any one of you, if you come to Africa, you will see that you see lots and lots of young people in the streets, because 3/4 of all Africans are less than 35 years old, and we need to train them to make sure that we create people who can start their companies, who can find jobs, and are not going to be looking for jobs because the training is not adequate.
Okay. Thione, you said that African technological innovation will transform the continent in the future. Can you develop this point?
It is already transforming the continent. We have the youngest population in the world. As you just said, more than 70% of young people, of the people of Africa, are young, under 35 years old today. We also have some of the fast growing economies in the world today, in the entire world. But it means nothing to me, and I think to many people, if we have the fastest growing economy and we have the youngest population, the greatest continent to invest today when you talk about return, when the basic needs of Africans are not met, when young people don't have decent education, when you're sick and you go to the hospital, you cannot see a doctor, when 600 million Africans are in the dark today, which is pushing us actually to do the Acorn Lighting Africa, to try to bring energy in the remotest or the farthest villages of the continent. It also doesn't mean nothing to me that we are the fastest and maybe leapfrogging across the world when it comes to technology if our women working hard in those farms cannot have access to market. This is our challenges of the new generation of Africa. How can we make sure that when we talk about growth, Senegal or Mali or Ivory Coast, etc., they are on 6 or 7% of growth as the World Bank or the FME talk about. It is so well helping the economies, the countries, or whoever is investing in those countries. If you go to those hotels in Africa, people are making transactions millions of dollars. But if you walk or drive 10 miles away from the capitals, people are struggling to find $1 to eat a day. How can we make sure that growth that we're talking about, that billions of dollars leaving Africa, benefits the children of Africa first of all, before anybody? How can we make sure that our children being born in those continents can have a decent life as we do my children in the United States or your children here in Europe? This is the biggest challenge for me. And if we cannot answer those questions, no matter what the technology do, if it doesn't close the disparity between the have so much and the so have nots, then there is no success to me. So we got to find a playing level field where money and business and technology and opportunities in Africa can support the Senegalese or the African lambda so they can have access and opportunities as everyone in their own countries. And I can give you so many examples. If you go to countries such as mine, billions of dollars are being invested in highways, in roads, in technology, and etc. But then you go to the universities, millions of young people scrambling down, looking for opportunities or just $1 to eat at the school. When they get out with a degree, some of them stay 10, 15 years just to find jobs. This is some serious concerns. And until we create an opportunity of economy of where everyone has an access, everyone has an opportunity, everyone can be able to have a decent life like we have in Europe and the United States, there will always be a gap. And there is always going to be not only disparities, but problems that we endure in our countries here in the West and also there in Africa. So to answer to your question, there is a challenge that's not only being faced by us Africans coming in to find solutions for our problems, but also to you investors that are coming in to our countries. You know better here in Europe that there is some sense of responsibilities for companies to do when they come to countries. And I talked about it earlier to the DG of Orange, which is the responsibility of companies to make sure they invest in those areas that they do business in. Not only to do business and take the money to bring it back to France or other countries, but also to invest in schools, in health, in education, in opportunities. So make sure that we transfer the skills to those young people and they can help to create more opportunities for Africa and also for your investors here in Europe.
I think you should also run for president.
Thank you. Thank you. Should I continue or I'm done?
Maybe Stéphane Richard could answer. There's a lack of investment in startup in Africa, and startup begin seduce investors, but the amount invested remain very far from the United States and the European level. Do you think it will change in the future?
Well, what I can say first is that Africa is a priority for Orange. It has been, for us, a key challenge, a key priority for the past 20 years. We have invested a lot in Africa. We have made heavy losses for years. And today we are investing over 20% of our revenues in Africa, in the range of 1.6 billion euros every year. Number two, nothing will be possible in Africa in terms of digital transformation if some people are not able to build the infrastructure that is needed, of course, to sustain this digital transformation, the networks. And to begin with, the mobile networks. we expect the mobile internet traffic to be multiplied by 15 in the next 3 years. Can you imagine the kind of technical and financial challenge that it is? Who is going to do this? Who is going to invest and to bet on this part of the digital revolution? Of course, ourselves, the carriers, the telcos. We are ready to do this, of course, because we think that there is a long-term return, not only on our connectivity business, but also because we want to be a global actor, a global player in the digital world, in new areas such as mobile banking, such as energy, such as content, for instance, or e-commerce. Number 3, I would like to say very simply and very kindly that, in my view, the development of Africa will need foreign investment, will need foreign companies like Orange, and I would be very pleased to see more foreign companies coming from the US, coming from Asia, coming from Europe to invest massively in Africa.
But is it really good business to invest in Africa for such big companies?
Africa today, in terms of prospects of economic growth, demography, and all the opportunities that are offered today by digitization, is, in my view, one of the best areas to invest. But Africa needs to realize and to keep in mind that, of course, everyone needs this foreign investment to come to Africa. We need to have, and the Minister of Togo made it very clear, attractive framework for investment. And to be honest, I don't think that it is by questioning the role of the big international companies that Africa is going to make progress. So the first point is to create and to sustain the most attractive framework possible for Africa. And finally, I totally agree with you by saying that a company like Orange cannot be only in Africa to make business, to make profit. Of course, it is necessary, because once again, the future of Africa will need companies like Orange making business and making profit, okay? But in the same time, we have a huge responsibility in those countries, and that is the reason why we are participating very heavily in a number of actions. For instance, in education, we have opened in Ivory Coast an institute focusing on data skills with l'École Polytechnique in France a few weeks ago. We have now been developing some coding schools in a few countries, especially in Senegal. And we will put a lot of resources, a lot of human also commitment in all those actions, meaning that we see our presence, our role in Africa in a very different way from what we can do in other parts of the world, in Europe, for instance. We have foundations in every country, very active, doing, I think, very useful things. We have helped more than 150,000 women in Africa to help them to access to digital tools and so on. So yes, definitely we have a very different and very global responsibility being in Africa, but never forget that the development in Africa will need companies, foreign companies, European companies, American companies, Asian companies ready to invest massively in Africa.
Maybe we can have the point of view of Microsoft on that point, please.
Yeah, if I may quickly jump in on that. The numbers are leading us to really look at Africa from a business, but also from a social impact. It makes good business sense today to invest in Africa. And I think as Orange, as Microsoft, and any other company that we're looking at, look, the opportunity and the growth that we have in some of these markets are really, truly at the forefront of what we see in terms of growth around the world. Today in Africa, there are over 450 companies that are making over $1 billion a year. $1 billion a year. So yes, you can definitely make money, but you can do it by also transforming the lives of a student, of an SME, of an FMCG company. So those opportunities are really there. Now, are there areas that we should probably look at improving? Absolutely. In Europe today, you have one economic zone. In Latin America and South America, you have 2 economic zones. In Africa, you have over 6 of them. So being able to trade from Kenya to Tanzania to Senegal is an extremely daunting task. Now, from a policy making, is that something that we as Africans are thinking about? Absolutely. President Kagame is leading the forefront of it with Transform Africa that took place, but also with the trade agreements. Once we do that, there is no reason why today, not just us Africans looking at investing, I do agree it should be led and invested heavily from Western investors, but it's also something that's being done by Africans as well. And I want to make sure that that's really in place. Africans today are looking at technology and as a startup as a real growth engine for transforming our economies, our people, and the continent. So hand in hand, I think it's definitely a task that's being done. But more importantly, I want this audience, and I want you to know that Africans are aware of it, we're ahead of it, and we're definitely making the policies in place, changing, upskilling ourselves, but also driving competition in the way that we should be able to compete with the rest of the world.
Thank you. Sina, what can African states do to attract investors?
I'll answer your question, but I have to say something which I think is very important. You know, the past 5 years in Togo, mobile penetration, high-speed mobile penetration has grown 760%. And I think it's very important to understand this, to understand the potential of and all the opportunities that that kind of exponential growth can bring. The other very important thing to understand when talking about Africa is that we Africans have a unique way to do things, to use technology. And I want to mention the initiative that we launched in Togo, which is CISO. CISO is an initiative to bring solar panels to rural areas. And we have a unique business model, which is to use a mobile payment platform so that people would repay for their solar panels on a daily basis. And this is made possible using mobile technology. So this is an African way of doing things, and we have other ways. I can talk to you about another initiative developed with the private sector to distribute subsidies to the poorest farmers to enable them to buy fertilizers. So these are unique uses that are made possible by our young entrepreneurs developing relevant applications. And we as state, what we do is that we have needs, and you create businesses because there are needs and there are people who are willing to pay for whatever solutions you bring them. So as government, we need to enable these entrepreneurs to develop the applications and to be able to sell it to us if we need them, and create that kind of emulation, that kind of challenge. So I think it's an example, it's a Togolese example, but you have this type of examples throughout Africa. And today I wanted to say hi to, I came in Paris with 10 young entrepreneurs from Togo. I want to say hi to them. They have developed great applications, and I think that it's very important to come to VivaTeck and events such as VivaTeck to showcase their ability to innovate.
Can I jump in on that?
Yeah.
Let me just quickly piggyback to what the CEO of Orange just talked about when it comes to Africa needing foreign investors to come invest massively in Africa. And I agree with you. Like here in Europe, as I talked about in the beginning, you needed the American money as a German Marshall Fund to come and support Europe to develop. And until today, you got foreigners that's coming here to invest massively. Just walk around the Champs-Élysées. Most of those boutiques and everything there is owned by the Middle East. The Middle Easterns are coming here to invest. Chinese are coming, the United States, everybody. But you're doing something that's very spectacular, which is you made sure the core of your economy is controlled by France. And I don't think you will let that go, because it comes to become serious when you cannot control your economy at all. In Africa today, what I'm saying to you is that, and this is for Africans in the room here, we need everybody to come to invest. We need your money. We need your transfer of knowledge. We need everything you got to give us when it comes to an opportunity to build our continent. But we cannot allow the core of our economies in Africa to be controlled by foreign investment. Then our economy becomes an artificial economy, where the money comes and goes out and cannot help build our schools. So Africans in this room, I'm telling you today that I've traveled the world and I've seen countries that's been built. I have not seen one country that's been built by foreigners or the World Bank or FME. But I've seen countries like Singapore, countries like Malaysia, countries like here in France, after the war, in England, in the United States where I live, that's only been built by the children of those countries. Until we say we Africans take the control of our continent with the help of our partners who are coming in a win-win situation with the right leaders in place, then we will not develop the continent, and that will not happen. We'll be dreaming. But we can do it if we come ourselves and control the core of our economy. And everyone coming to invest have to abide by the social responsibilities that is put upon them.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This will be the last word
Thank you.
for this conference. Thank you all. That was great. Thank you very much. Okay.
Mesdames, messieurs, merci. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies. Okay.